As the next administration prepares to take office, the newly sworn-in Congress hitting the ground running, with local leaders already presenting bipartisan plans that will impact your taxes. New York Congressman Lawler going on the record. State of the states, both New York and New Jersey governors laying out their agendas for the upcoming year.
Nobody should ever have to sacrifice their economic security in order to be a present and engaged parent.
We need to expand involuntary commitment into a hospital to include someone who does not have the mental capacity to care for themselves.
Our Picks panel weighs in on how the grand ideas will impact us in our neighborhoods and which will see the biggest pushback. And nearly 2 weeks into congestion pricing, Bronx residents looking at the impact beyond just traffic.
We should be looking at existing harm and how do we work together to create different outcomes.
The air quality issues Bronx neighbors want to address when Picks on Politics starts right now.
This is Picks on Politics with Dan Manarino.
And welcome to Picks on Politics, everybody. There is a lot to discuss, and let's begin and talk about the new Congress. 2 weeks in, lawmakers getting right to work. Hey, remember SALT? That's the state and local tax deduction. Well, a bipartisan group of Congress members want to eliminate the cap. So both Democrats and Republicans from New York and New Jersey spent this week introducing a bill allowing taxpayers to fully deduct their state and local taxes on their federal income returns. The current law caps that amount to $10,000, a cap which, by the way, was brought about during the first Trump administration. Now, as the president-elect prepares now for his second term and has talked about SALT, the question is, does this new tax plan even have a chance? Well, one of the bill's leaders, New York Congressman Lawler, he is going on the record. And Congressman Lawler is joining me now, so great to see you. Thanks for coming back to Picks on Politics.
Thanks for having me, Danny.
So, Congressman, let me begin. You have this letter, this bill, really, to announce the elimination of the SALT cap entirely. Welcome news for so many from New York and New Jersey, right? Now, let me get into this because you met with President-elect Trump about this very issue. Was he on board with a full elimination and no cap moving forward?
Well, look, President Trump was very clear in our meeting with him that he agrees about the need to lift the cap on SALT. He would be open to a full repeal. But obviously, in totality of the tax bill, the question is, how do you pay for all the different provisions? One of the things that would be concerning, obviously, would be for the alternative minimum tax to come back or for rates to go up. So all of this is going to be negotiated. Obviously, as a member of the SALT caucus, we understand the impact on New York. We want to see a full repeal. But obviously, we need to work through all of the provisions of the tax bill and how they impact one another. My objective, and I've been very clear from the very start, if we do not lift the cap on SALT, I will not support the tax bill, period. I am willing to negotiate in good faith and work through the numbers. But we need tax relief here in New York, in large part because of the disastrous tax policies that we have in New York. We are the highest tax burden state in the country. And that's something that does need to change up in Albany.
So let me talk to you about that, right? Because you ran on this, and it sounds like you're sticking to your word here. But there's a difference between the full elimination of the SALT cap and then a number, right? And lifting it to a certain number. And I spoke to Nicole Malliotakis about this, and she didn't want a full elimination because she said it would only support the super rich. So is there a number then that you would be happy with, or are you looking just for a full elimination?
Look, I've introduced legislation that would lift the cap to $100,000 for individuals and $200,000 for married couples. That would cover almost everybody in my district. The only people who wouldn't be covered are the super wealthy, but they would obviously benefit by being able to deduct up to that level. But look, ultimately, the bottom line is $10,000 is woefully insufficient. But if you raise the number, within up to $100,000 for individuals, that's going to impact almost everybody and cover them when it comes to deducting your state and local taxes on your federal income tax return.
Okay, and that's certainly something that's to be continued, so keep us posted on that one. Okay, I want to get to the other big story from overseas, and that's the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. And we're talking right now, it's in full disclosure to the audience on Friday morning. This is obviously an evolving situation, but I wanted to get your thoughts, Congressman, on the negotiations and the hopeful end to this war. And really, is this a big win for the Biden administration in his final days in office?
Look, I think this was an area where you saw the Trump administration and the Biden administration work together to get this deal across the finish line. President Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, went there for the negotiations. You saw Prime Minister Netanyahu thank President Trump for his leadership. I think, obviously, this has been long in the works, and so I think both administrations deserve a level of credit here. But the bottom line is we have 7 Americans who are still being held hostage, 4 deceased, 3 presumed living. We want them to come home to their families. We want their families to have closure. This was critically important to get done. And I think, obviously, both Hamas and our allies, like Qatar, understood that if it did not get done, as President Trump said, there would be hell to pay. So I think this is a step in the right direction. Obviously, when you have negotiations like this, there are terms that are not great, and we certainly acknowledge that. But getting the American and Israeli hostages home was paramount. Obviously, long term, for there to be peace in the Middle East, Arab majority states must recognize Israel's right to exist and normalize relations. And as the incoming chair of the Middle East Subcommittee on the Foreign Affairs Committee, that is going to be my primary focus, expanding the Abraham Accords, putting sanctions in place on Iran, stopping the source of funding to Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis and other terror networks in the region.
Yeah, that just answered my next question, which was how you're going to play a role moving forward and making sure that people operate in good faith. I want to bring it back here to our area, and a big topic for so many, besides the SALT taxes, of course, 2 words that you know all too well, and that is congestion pricing. And you've been very vocal about your opposition, but it's happening, right? People are already paying it. And this came up in your meeting with President-elect Trump. So what are the options, right? Moving forward, does the president-elect actually have the authority, Congressman, to repeal it? Because the governor doesn't seem to think he does.
Well, look, this is a scam. It is nothing more than a cash grab. The MTA needs to raise $1 billion in revenue to borrow $15 billion for its capital program. And by the way, even with congestion pricing, you hear Democrats saying it's still not enough, that they need to raise more taxes. Look, we spoke to President Trump. He agrees with us that this is a scam, that it's bad for New York, bad for the country. We are going to look at every avenue. For this program to go into effect, the Federal Highway Administration had to approve it under the Biden administration. I believe President Trump would have the right to revoke those approvals. As a federal judge said, the approval was arbitrary and capricious. It did not have a full environmental review.
Would that have to go through the courts, Congressman?
I believe President Trump's administration has the right to revoke it. And by the way, let Kathy Hochul sue. If she's so confident in this program, let her sue. But I believe President Trump has the right to revoke the approvals through the Federal Highway Administration. With that said, we are also looking legislatively at what we can do to ban congestion pricing nationwide. This is, again, a scam. It is not about reducing congestion. It is not about the environment. It is everything to do with raising funds. That's it.
You just mentioned Governor Hochul, so let's go there for a second. You were there for her State of the State address. You voiced your opposition to her plans. Now, I asked you this last time. I'll ask you again. Are you planning a run for governor against Kathy Hochul?
Look, we're looking at it very seriously. Obviously, one-party rule in Albany over the last 6 years has been disastrous. We lead the nation in outmigration. We have the highest tax burden in the country, the worst business climate. Public safety is a major concern. So there are a lot of issues facing New Yorkers. I believe New Yorkers want common sense and a more balanced approach to governing. And so we're going to look at it very closely over the next few months. I'll make a decision sometime this year. But I think it's important to give New Yorkers a choice. I think they need to understand the difference both in terms of style and substance, but policy. And the fact is, Governor Hochul is incompetent. She is inept. She is incapable of doing the job. And that much is clear over the last few years.
Sounds like you're running. But I know you'll wait for the official decision later on. I do want to ask you about news of the day as well, and that is that Mayor Adams is meeting with President-elect Trump down at Mar-a-Lago right now. Many questioning what exactly that meeting's about. It was on taxpayer dollars, right? Do you think that the mayor should have met with President-elect Trump? And what do you think the meeting's about?
Yes. I mean, look, he's going to be the president of the United States, much to some people's chagrin. But the reality is that he is going to be president. And New York City, as the largest city in the country, has a lot of challenges, including the migrant crisis. And so meeting with the president is wise on the mayor's part, frankly. And, you know, I would encourage all of my Democratic colleagues, from Leader Jeffries to Governor Hochul, to go meet with the president and discuss the issues facing New York. How do you expect to accomplish anything or get anything of substance done if you're unwilling to sit down with the leader of the free world? It's illogical. So whether you like him or not, whether you agree with him or not, really isn't the point. The point is we all have a job to do. And you know what? The American people elected Donald Trump to serve as president for the next 4 years. And so it's incumbent upon our elected leadership to sit down and try to find an area of commonality and agreement where you can.
Should he be pardoned? Yes or no? Adams.
That'll be up to President Trump. Obviously, that case is still pending. We'll see how it plays out.
All right. Congressman Lawler, I appreciate you always making the time. So many things that are to be continued, so we'll have you back soon, okay?
Thanks, Danny.
Good to see you. Up next, everybody, the Picks panel. Our team weighing in on Mayor Adams' visit to Mar-a-Lago. Plus, a new poll shows Andrew Cuomo leading the race for New York City mayor, and he hasn't even entered. Picks on Politics back in just 2 minutes.